Day that the Lord has made, let us rejoice and be glad in it. What a wonderful phrase to hear any day. We know that some people will say, you go outside and it's a sunny day, and you can't help but think that phrase, this is the day the Lord has made, let us rejoice and be glad in it. But man, I think that was made for Easter. I think that's exactly what the psalmist had in mind before the psalmist had any mind about what Easter might be. There was a sense of such incredible joy that would come through, something like an Easter joy, maybe beyond our imagination, but that's exactly the point. It's beyond anything that we could have constructed. To be able to have a day like Easter is only there because we rely on the fact that God makes such a day. And what a day it was. Those women who headed out to just see the tomb, as Matthew's gospel tells us, and then encounters the earthquake and the stone and everything that goes with it, and then this message. First, come and see the place where he lay. And you might think that that made Easter. Simply having a chance to enter into the tomb and see that it was empty. And I have an idea that the women would have liked to have just stayed there, just to feel like they were in the presence of where Jesus had been. They were in the very place where Jesus had been raised from the dead. But that was not what they were told to do. It was come and take a look, but then go. When I was in Jerusalem a couple of years ago, and at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you can get in line and stand and go to the traditional spot where Jesus was laid, with a tomb where Joseph of Arimathea had. Now, of course, there's this grand structure built up around it, so it doesn't look much like it probably would have in Jesus' day. But when you're in the queue for that line, you only go in 5 or 6 at a time, and you're allowed to go in and just to kneel. But you know you're only given like 30 seconds there. And then the attendant says, friends, it's time to go. And you get up and you exit. And I'm sure many people have said, no, I want to stay, because that might have been exactly what the women were feeling at the tomb. The point is, we can't. The point is, we're not supposed to stay at the tomb. We are supposed to not just go, but go and... You have to answer this one. We're not supposed to just go, but we are to go and tell. Right. It's kind of like second grade show and tell, but this is go and tell. That's our Easter proclamation. That's what the angel told the women to do. And then as the story goes on, of course, so the women are running to tell the disciples that Jesus has been raised from the dead, just as he said, and lo and behold, there's Jesus. And so they fall at Jesus' feet. And you can imagine, where would they have wanted to stay? At Jesus' feet now, as they're right there at Jesus' feet, and they would like to just stay there, and Jesus has to tell them the same thing that the angel told them. You're not supposed to stay here and worship me. I need you to go and tell. Exactly. In order to do that, that's a part of what our call on Easter is. It would be something to feel like we could be in God's presence if we remained in the tomb. But the thing is, we heard in our opening liturgy, the tomb is kind of a dark place. It's not until you get out of the tomb that you understand the joy of a new day that dawned for the women, that dawns for us. That's a part of what our Easter proclamation is. But to do that, we have to heed the words that Paul wrote to the church in Colossia, where he said, put your mind on things above. And that becomes part of our Easter experience. But to really get this, I'm going to need some young people to help me out. If you don't have a driver's license yet, come on up here and spend a couple minutes with me, all right? Got a few more? I know there was more at the egg hunt. Oh yeah, come on up. So part of this Easter experience could be that we just want to look down, because Jesus was placed what's called in a tomb, which would be like a small cave. Has anybody ever walked through a small opening into a cave? What did you have to do when you walked through? Yeah, you got to duck your head. You've got to like kind of go down and get in and see what's in there, and it's usually not really well lit. And what else? You see that? Yeah, when you duck your head. And then where are your eyes pointed when you duck your head? Down to the ground, yeah. And then when you come out of the cave, do you stay looking at the ground the whole time? Yeah. What? Some say yes, some say no. Now, if I'm walking around and only looking at the ground, what am I probably going to do? Bonk my head somewhere. I'm going to run into a tree or into a wall or something if I do that. But if I want to be able to know everything happening around me, what do I have to do? I have to look up, and that's what I need you to help me with. A couple more times, I'm going to say, where should we look? And you're going to yell back at me, look up. All right, let's try that. So I'll be talking about something, and I'll say, where should we look? Look up. Exactly. All right, so we'll try it one more time. I'm going to be talking about like flowers, and I want to look at one flower, but if I look at one flower, I might miss the entire garden. Where should I look? Look up. Yeah, as you say, just shout back at me. Look up, okay? Are you ready to do that for me? And it's going to be happening during the whole rest of my couple minutes of talking, so you got to be ready anytime, okay? And if you didn't get a bag at the egg hunt, if you were at the egg hunt, you got one of these bags already probably. If you didn't, Pastor Nate has one for you. You can take one of those and head back to your seat. And be ready, because I'm going to ask you, where should we look? Look up. Okay, all right, go, back to your seats. Oh, no, I didn't. There we go. Let's find out what's in here. Okay. Now, if I stuck my head in this bag and that's all I looked at, I might not realize it's Easter. What do I have to do? Where should I look? Oh, look up. Oh, and I see all these people who are here and all the joy that we are sharing. That's a part of what we want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes we just need to be grounded. Sometimes in our life, we do need to just be focused. We need to understand what's happening right here, right now, in this very moment. And sometimes we have to be grounded. But once we're grounded and we find ourselves and we find our own soul revived again by that time that we had to ourselves, we know that there's a world out there that might need us. And when that happens, we need to look somewhere. Where should we look? Look up, exactly. And so what that happens is you look around this place today, and if I would walk in and I'd want to say, oh, what a beautiful lily. I just want to examine just this one and look at all the pretty yellow and the stuff that's fallen out of it, and I want to go home and tell somebody, I saw an Easter lily. What might I have missed? Oh, yeah, you're ready for it. You're ready. I might have missed that. There's a whole garden here to experience. That's what we are called to do. If we only look at one flower, we might actually miss the garden. So if we're looking at one flower, we should also look where? Look up. That's the world. It's a way of just looking at the world differently. It's a way of taking this Easter story and making it a part of our life. It's a difference of changing our perspective from being people from a tomb to being people of like gates of righteousness, the way the psalmist said that they were prepared for us. It's a way of not looking at death, but looking at life. It's a way of not staying at Jesus' feet, but looking into Jesus' very eyes. It's not staying in one place where we think God dwells, but going out into the world and telling the experience that God creates for our lives. In order to do that, we cannot stay grounded. That is, we can't stay in the ground, but we have to become the resurrection people. And where do resurrection people look? Look up. That's what they do because they see a world that's more diverse than they might have ever known. They see a world that's filled with people that are different from them, that have different gifts from them, that create new ways of relationship for us. They hear stories that are new to us. They're not stories about somebody who was crucified, but instead stories about somebody who was raised from the dead, who creates the gates of heaven for us. There are stories about what it means to be people who go out into the world and don't contain the story for themselves, but actually can't contain the story because they have to share this good news with the world. This is what happens when we look where? We look up. We look up and we see the world that God has put right before us. We look up and we realize there are mountains and there are plains. We realize that there are crops and there are oceans. We realize there are people of all different colors, of all shapes and sizes, and we realize God put them all here so that we could experience everything about God's creation. And when we know that about ourselves, when we know that we live as a resurrection people, then we know we are people who will always look where? Look up. Because when we do that, we catch a glimpse of the fullness of God's creation. When we do that, we catch a glimpse of the very gates of righteousness. When we do that, we catch a glimpse of what it means to live as a person who doesn't just know the resurrection, but is so caught up in the resurrection that we can't help but share it. When we look out in the world, we want to see it all, and the only way that we will do that is if we look where? Look up. Set your mind on the things that are above, because that is where the glory of God dwells. Amen. I invite you to stand as we sing.